Good morning, this is Dan Wade, the Department of State Treasurer. I'd like to welcome you all to the July 2022 edition of Ask Me Anything. This is the teleconference call at which you can ask the Treasurer anything that's on your mind, and he'll tell you what's on his. And with that, we'll get started right away. Thank you all for joining us, and Treasurer Folwell, if you would, give us some opening remarks.
Thank you, Dan and staff, for putting this together. And I know it's a busy media day with the budget being signed by the governor, but we look forward to answering any of your questions. We got news this morning about we have been on pace to break all records from nccash.com, and please stay tuned to that. And some preliminary numbers regarding our investment performance for the last fiscal year that you'll be hearing more about in the next few days. We continue to be very busy with our local government commission with some of the things that all of you are reading about and writing about. So with that, we're glad to this being the 75th consecutive, whatever it is. I can't remember.
Ask me anything.
We probably should know what that number is, with how many months it is. We will look forward to entertaining your questions if you have any.
Thank you, Treasurer Folwell. Those of you who've been on the call before know the ground rules. Those of you who may be new, just so you understand, everything's on the table. All we ask is that you give us your name and the media organization you represent, and it's just kind of the floor is open. There's no particular order, so we'll open up the questions now for whoever wants to go first.
Hi, AP Dillon, North State Journal. I was wondering if you could talk a little about Senate Bill 265, exactly how that strengthens the LGC's powers.
Yeah, that's the, thank you, AP. That's the LGC Toolkit 2. And it is building on the work that Senator Lisa Barnes did in the previous session. As we have, as you know, because you've been reporting on this, that regarding some of the issues that are going on in the local government commission in some of the small towns, communities, water and sewer districts, counties across North Carolina, in some respects, this has been like an onion. The more reason we had to come up with more tools and more toolkits is that we're finding we've got more things that are broken than we didn't anticipate. So that was something about the toolkit. And AP, just a couple of finer points. Number one is that we're gratified that this has become law, and that the local governments are going to have to be more transparent, especially with significant events where things were done with some of these communities and they did not report them to the local government commission, as well as different thresholds for disclosure when they borrow money from private entities, like in the case of Spring Lake borrowing money for a fire station over a 59-month period, which is about the term that you would use to finance a car, not a fire station.
You have a follow-up, AP?
Yeah, I was wondering if you could also talk about the recent turn events with the Council of State.
Yes. The Council of State is a duly functioning, elected body. It should have no less transparency or competence than any city council, county commission, or the legislature. And the people of this state, during a COVID environment or a non-COVID environment, when it comes to decisions being made about the things that are keeping them up at night, which is job, food, health, and educational insecurity and uncertainty, they deserve not only to have a transparent Council of State in terms of how these Council of State members vote, but they need to have all the process and procedures and transparency that exist and that is required in other levels of government. And I can't imagine that the governor would not be doing backflips to sign this piece of legislation once it gets to him. And let's be clear about one thing, AP, that there can only be one governor at a time. And I agree with that. And it doesn't matter what political party the governor or the council of state members are. But the fact is if the governor determines that the council of state needs to meet remotely for health safety reasons, that's the governor's choice. But for not to report the votes and the findings of the council of state and not to be more transparent is not acceptable. We're not meeting. The council of state got canceled today. And we had to put in place, as you know, AP, last year or so, we started Facebook streaming the council of state meetings. And, for the first couple of ones of those meetings, I was the only one sitting there. And then there was 2, and then there was 3, and then there was 4. And then, we were on the verge of having the majority of the council of state come in because they also think that there needs to be transparency regarding the council of state. So that's all we're after. And the fact is, what you just asked me about, AP, you don't need a law to tell you what's right and what's wrong. The council of state can start operating with transparency, tell the members of the press especially how certain council members vote on certain executive orders and follow Robert's rules of orders. They could do that tomorrow. They could have done it yesterday. They can do it today. So you don't need a law to tell you what's right and what's wrong. And that's why we're very optimistic that either the procedures of the council of state will change without the law, or that the law will be passed very quickly as we go into the long session. And part of the process is that the council of state needs its own council. We have a member of the council of state who is the counsel to the council of state. And most of the time there's no problem with that, but there are issues. For example, when I've tried to put things on the agenda, for example, like discussing COVID specifically, like discussing the health, the food, the job, and the educational insecurity and uncertainty, when I've been unable to do that. So that's what we're after. But you don't need a law to tell you what's right and what's wrong. And this was true yesterday, today, and tomorrow regarding the transparency of the council of state.
Thank you, Treasurer. AP, you have another question?
No, those are the ones I wanted to ask.
Thank you. We appreciate that. With that, we'll open up for further questions from anyone.
Hi, this is Alexandria Sands with Axios in Charlotte. I want to talk about the possibility of a recession, and in the budget they put $1 billion into a reserve for that purpose. I wanted to ask you what municipalities should be doing to prepare.
Well, thank you. Can't tell how old you are, but I don't think you were living in the 70s. And I lived during that period. I'm saying that because there are a couple things that can happen here. One is that you have hyperinflation, and you have lower economic activity, and that's called stagflation. So that's higher cost in a recessionary environment, and it's the worst of all worlds. What we do know today is that it's costing the average family over $5,000 more to live this year than it did last year. So it's costing more to drive, more to eat, and more to heat their homes and generally live their lives. We do know that's a fact. We do know as a fact that inflation is a thief. And it's a thief, especially for the lower and fixed income people of our state who really don't, in some instances, have any assets that can inflate during an inflationary period. We do know that we have an employment crisis in North Carolina. And this is not just an employment crisis for Harris Teeter or Charlotte Pipe or any of the other great companies within your readership down there in Charlotte. This is an employment crisis that's facing school systems, cities, counties, and the state government itself. So when you put all this together, this is unprecedented. And at the end of the day, what can your listeners or viewers or readers do about this. I'm going to use two words that generally are not used correctly and in some instances actually offend people. One is conservative and one is liberal. The only way that people are going to be liberated from these inflationary trends, the only way they're going to be liberated from that is if they conserve. And conserving means getting more out of less. And we all need to be thinking about what we're doing, where we're going, what we're buying, and asking ourselves, are we doing things that feed into this inflation, which, as I said earlier, is a thief on the lower and fixed income people of our state. Now, at the end of the day, this is a real possibility. And I'm not only saying this as the state treasurer, but also as the sole fiduciary of one of the largest pools of public money in the world, because this does impact the value of stocks and bonds going forward. So this is a real fear, and I think that most of the people on this call have read or heard about some of the leaders in Washington and how they may have they're looking at their own report card on this, what's happened in the last year, and thinks that maybe they may have missed it. But on the other hand, I will tell you that if you look at the census of North Carolina and consider that our census to be somewhat like a torso, our torso is very strong as far as our economic viability. But I can tell you, as the state treasurer and the chair of the local government commission and chair of the state banking commission, there's a lot of stress out there in the arms, the legs, the toes, and the fingers of our state, as I refer to as rural North Carolina. And it's great to have a strong torso, but it's even greater to have all those other things moving in the same direction. And that's why your question is so important. It's important to think about it, even if you can't determine where we're headed with it. And we have to think inside and outside the box. And once we figure out what direction to go in, we need to use both sides of the box.
Thank you, Treasurer. You have a follow-up, Alex?
Yeah. So what should cities like Charlotte be looking at when they're reflecting on their budget?
The city of Charlotte should, number one, this is an atta girl and atta boy for the city of Charlotte, is to continue to pre-fund their hundreds of millions of dollars of unfunded healthcare liabilities. This is something the city of Charlotte started 31 years ago, I believe, under Mayor Vinroot, and they've continued that. So the credit for this goes not only to Mayor Vinroot, but every mayor since then and every city council member since then, including the current ones. The second thing is that they need to do what the General Assembly just did with this budget, which is, to put things in reserve. It's very easy. It's very difficult to tell people no, but all the local elected officials at every level need to, when they say no, they need to be willing to spell it KNOW. If you say no to someone for a special program or this, that, and the other, you need to explain to them why. And lastly, nobody has a crystal ball, but you can't gamble, with the financial future of any community, much less one of the largest cities in the United States and what I consider the second biggest financial center in the United States. And so that would be my advice to the city of Charlotte, is to continue to reserve. Start out like you're going to hold out, meaning don't put money in programs that are going to continue to need money if this recession happens the way some are predicting. Because what the businesses and especially lower and fixed income people of Charlotte need is they need certainty in terms of their tax burden. And, there's a lot of uncertainty out there with the cost of all these things going up dramatically that need to be factored in. And lastly, any elected leaders, if they're going to show up and stand up to perform their elected duties, that if they can't do that by attacking problems and not attacking people, then I would just hope they'd shut up. And this is true for any level of government, not Charlotte specifically. But it's just really, really important that because of the stress that our citizens are under, that they think or know that their elected officials are actually trying to fix things.
You have another question, Alex?
No, thank you so much.
Well, we appreciate your joining us today. With that, we'll open the floor to further questions.
Yes, hi. Teresa Opeka, Carolina Journal.
Hey, Teresa.
Question about, Treasurer, how hopeful are you that the Medical D Weaponization Act is going to move along further in the legislature, either later in the year or early next year during the long session?
I'm very hopeful, and as I said when I got the question a few moments ago, Teresa, about the Council of State transparency, you don't need a law to tell you what's right and what's wrong. The healthcare cartel in North Carolina, and you know what cartels do, they control the quantity of the product, the quality of the product, the access to the product, the price of the product, and whether they punish you. The cartel could stop this. They could quit putting out, ridiculous statements about how sorry they are. They need to repent, which means to stop and reverse course. This bill has taken off. It is widely supported by Democrats and Republicans, not just across North Carolina, but across the United States. The Washington Post did a 4,000-word expose surrounding this issue. We are not finished talking about the de-weaponization of credit scores. And I just want to tell you that, and give me one pause for a moment, just a second, but I just want to tell you that because of credit scores, people are not able to see themselves past their poverty. And that's a very serious matter to me. And at the end of the day, we are very hopeful that this issue will be taken care of through legislation or without legislation. And that's very critical. I would also add that other than supposedly putting donuts in the legislative cafeteria, we've gone weeks and months now asking for input from the healthcare cartel. And, as many statements as they put out, I've never seen them refute one of our facts. And the reason is we're, partnering with people who are helping us figure out what's right, get it right, and keeping it right. I will also add, Teresa, that the healthcare cartel has many issues, not just the billions of dollars they made during COVID, but as you've read this morning, maybe some of these entities may be losing some of their certifications. We have more reports coming out about charity care. We got more reports coming out about all this, and we're doing all this internally, thanks to one particular person in our office, Julie, who's really, has the keys, the gear shift, and the gas pedal and the steering wheel on this topic. And I know that's dangerous for some of you who know Julie to even think about, but so far she's keeping it between the ditches. But my point of saying that to you is that this is a serious matter. And as I've said before, Teresa, former Treasurer Harlan Bowles warned us about this when I was a senior in high school in 1977. Bill Gates warned us about this 15 years ago. State Auditor Beth Wood 12 years ago. State Employees Association 10 years ago. Warren Buffett 4 years ago. Senator Elizabeth Warren 3 years ago in the presidential debate when she said the leading cause of bankruptcy in the United States is things associated with health care billing. Generally speaking, what do those folks have in common? They're all Democrats. I'm not. This is not a Democrat, Republican, unaffiliated, libertarian issue. This is a moral issue. When people cannot see themselves past their poverty based on the consumption of a product they'd rather not have consumed, when they try to inquire what it costs, they're told it's none of their dang business, and then when they don't pay that bill, they get punished and their credit scores get weaponized. we're since learning that there's some essential jobs in the state that you probably shouldn't or can't even apply for because of your credit score. I met a 27-year-old last week whose credit score went down 50 points, based on a $10 copay on a COVID shot that he didn't know he owed. It's really hard to recover from a 50-point reduction in a credit score when you're 27 years old based on a $10 copay. There's no telling what that may result in it costing him. Because we know that these credit scores determine what you pay for a cell phone, the basic liability insurance on your car, the benefit of the doubt to rent an apartment, interest rates on a house, and now possibly even keeping you from getting essential work and upward mobility in your life.
Do you have a follow-up, Teresa?
No, that was it. I just wanted to see, what the treasurer thought about, this going through and hopefully passing in the legislature. I'm sure that you were disappointed it didn't get a little further at this point, but no, I don't have a follow-up. Thank you so much.
Well, actually, Teresa, I mean, yeah, sure, we'd love for somebody to snap their fingers and pass the legislation, but this is a big goal and a big deadline. And we have always desired, our door, minds, and hearts have been open for input about this, and we're very gratified of all the partnerships and people who've come out to help us. Advocates for all types of advocates for people across North Carolina from all walks of life and all different types of organizations. Because at the end of the day, which you've done such a great job of reporting on, everyone knows that something's wrong with healthcare in this state. Everyone.
These have all been great questions. We don't want to leave anybody out, so if there are any further questions, we're happy to take those.
Hi, Treasurer. This is Colin Campbell at Business NC and NC Tribune. I wanted to ask about the status of the data transparency bill, where y'all had reached an agreement and compromise with Blue Cross and got that through the Senate, and then it looks like the House didn't take it up before it was the end of session. Does that have a chance going forward? Is this a situation where the hospitals jumped in and said, hey, let's pump the brakes on this, we don't like it, even though you and Blue Cross have come to a deal?
We were told a little over a year ago by the Speaker to this differences regarding House Bill 169 that we need to get with the opposition and the people we were working with. The only people we were working with were Blue Cross Blue Shield. We worked for almost a year to get the language that was in the final version of House Bill 169. So we did exactly what we were told by the Speaker regarding getting that done. Now, as you correctly pointed out, the Hospital Association, the cartel, as they do in every situation, injected themselves in stopping this legislation. Now, what's so ironic about that, Colin, and I'm looking at Dan because I think Dan was actually sitting in this very room about 3.5 years ago when we were discussing all these issues with the healthcare cartel, and specifically Steve Lawler. He was sitting, within 2 feet of me, and he pointed his finger toward me and he said, "You're not our customer." And I said, "Excuse me, we've spent about $2 billion with your hospitals." Well, that may all be true, but you're not our customer. Our customer is Blue Cross Blue Shield. So if you have an issue about transparency, you should talk to your third-party administrator, because that's who we have contracts with. We don't have contracts with the state health plan or the treasurer's office. So those were words from his lips to our ears. So for them to inject themselves in just another matter tells you just how powerful this cartel is. Always focused on attacking people and never actually attacking the problems that are facing the average North Carolinian. So that's where we are, and it's sad, but fortunately, the federal government has put some things in place, so we're going to be focused on what we always are focused on, and that is getting it right.
Follow up, Colin.
Yeah, just briefly, it just strikes me in a lot of things healthcare related that the House seems to be on board with the position of the hospital association. Do you have any sense for why that is, or if there's a concern that, the Senate doesn't seem to necessarily take the marching orders from this organization, but perhaps the House leadership does?
I used to serve in the House, and I'd rather both chambers be completely on board on what's in the best interest, especially those that teach, protect, and otherwise serve who are participants in this plan. I can't answer why things happen the way they do. All we can do is try to get in our possession emails and other types of information that could show exactly how they feel about this. All I know is the speaker told us to go and sit down with Blue Cross Blue Shield, our third-party administrator, and work this out. And that's exactly what we did. Nothing more and nothing less. I will tell you that, as you know, Colin, as well as anyone on this call, that this is all built on the chassis of Prognosis Profits, which was a Pulitzer-nominated report that you possibly even worked on at McClatchy. And then the latest piece that came out in the Assembly NC, which kind of took Prognosis Profits and started thinking for a moment. Everything that Prognosis Profits talked about 11 years ago is worse, far worse. And even since the Assembly NC article came out, we're finding out it's even worse than that. So, I can tell you that as Governor Martin always says, doing right's rarely wrong. And, there's only been us in this boat, but I can tell you that we're going to get a bigger boat because there's more and more people who are realizing just how powerful this cartel is. They control everything, and they will say anything, and facts don't matter. When you basically give the middle finger to both the previous and the current president of the United States when they signed an executive order to bring transparency to healthcare, and then you and the Chamber of Commerce sue the presidents of the United States over the executive order just to bring transparency to healthcare. And then I paraphrased in one of their responses when they lost not just once but twice at the Federal Court of Appeals, they basically said, and I paraphrase, we don't think telling people what things cost lead them to make better decisions. That one statement demonstrates the complete arrogance of this organization. And the fact is, this cartel gets stronger and stronger and stronger every day. And the solution, Colin, is very simple. Get rid of secret contracts, push the power to the consumer, make sure that your charity care somewhat equals the amount of tax benefit that the taxpayers of this state are giving you. Quit punishing and weaponizing people's credit scores, and stop being investment banking and real estate development firms that give you even more power and result in you consolidating healthcare into the hands of fewer and fewer people. We're seeing it in Western North Carolina with HCA Mission Health, where I'm a plaintiff in that class action suit. We're seeing it already before this deal's had its second birthday in Wilmington, North Carolina, with Novant taking over what was one of the most high-quality, low-cost, accessible, profitable independent hospitals in the United States, which now the wheels are coming off of that transaction. We're seeing it all across the state, and we can't prove this yet. I don't think there's any state in the country that has become more cartel-like in the last 5 years in terms of healthcare services than North Carolina.
Give a follow-up, Colin.
That's all I got. Thanks.
All right, we appreciate it. Thanks for joining the
Good
call.
to see you yesterday, Colin.
We are ready for another question. If we have no more, we'll go to the treasurer for closing remarks.
Well, thank you all. Thanks, staff, for putting this together. And as always, there's a second component to being accessible and transparent, and there's a third, more important component, and that is that we don't know the answer to something, we'll tell you, and we'll get back to you. The last thing you need, especially with the scarcity of resource and the abundance of content that all of you are facing in your daily lives, the last thing you need is somebody at our level giving you a half-baked answer on any topic. So as always, if anybody has any follow-up questions to any of these things, don't hesitate to reach out to us. And I know we didn't talk about on this call, but we did briefly, smashing all records on nccash.com, and part of that credit goes to the media in North Carolina. We don't really have an advertising budget, so to speak. So us smashing these records by nearly 50% is, part of the relationship that we have with you to get the word out and get this money back into the hands of its rightful owners. So thank you for joining us. I hope that all of you will have a safe and enjoyable July, and we look forward to joining you next month. And hopefully we'll be joining you after we actually have the Council of State meeting, which was canceled this time. Thanks.
Thank you all. We'll see you next month.